very good evening to all participants. I, on behalf of the Department of Chemistry, Postgraduate Department of Chemistry, Lady Brabourne College, warmly welcome you to the national webinar on Emerging Trends in Chemical Sciences, Part 2. May I request all participants to please mute their microphones and switch off their cameras. We will first have the inaugural address to be delivered by our respected principal, Professor Shuli Chowdhury, who is also the chief patron of this webinar. May I now request Madam Principal to please deliver her welcome address.
Thank you, Papia. A wonderful afternoon. It's a wonderful occasion that we are meeting in this way now. Respected Speaker, Dr. Banerjee, respected organizers, the Postgraduate Department of Chemistry, headed by Dr. Papia Ganguly, the departmental head, respected participants, that is basically the viewers who are actively participating in today's webinar, a warm welcome to all of you. It's a somewhat unusual situation because we have to organize a series of webinars in almost all the departments. Usual seminars can't be arranged. Today's topic is absolutely scientific, recent advances in chemical sciences, and you all know that science and technology are not my cup of tea. So I will not waste much time by lingering my speech. After all, I'm not a speaker and I'm not eligible to speak now. One thing, as you all know, that in this pandemic we have to organize webinars. We cannot arrange the usual seminars in our pretty old auditorium, which has recently been modernized and renovated. And it appears absolutely empty. It appears absolutely spectatorless. So I really feel sorry for that. Anyway, it's going to be a very lively, a very timely, a very useful webinar, no doubt about it. I'm pretty certain that lots and lots of questions will be raised by our speakers, by our spectators, by our participants, our viewers today. And lots and lots of their probable answers too are to be provided by our speaker today. And at the end of the webinar, I am pretty certain that everybody present here will be able to know a lot more new things and a lot more new ways of explaining them. Everybody will feel more and more enriched and more enlightened. I wish today's webinar, organized by the Postgraduate Department of Chemistry, Lady Brabourne College, a grand success. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam, for your wonderfully encouraging words. We are highly motivated because you are always encouraging us and always by our side, encouraging these kind of exchanges and interactions. Thank you so much, ma'am. Next, we are very honored to have with us our distinguished speaker, the eminent scientist and academician, Dr. Rahul Banerjee of Pfizer. Dr. Rahul Banerjee is an eminent scientist and a frontline researcher in the field of structural chemistry with the flavor of chemical synthesis to design new porous materials. His work represents an important blend of fundamental as well as applied research, as these materials might selectively capture and store hydrogen and carbon dioxide as a reservoir. His research group has developed a methodology of synthesizing porous covalent organic frameworks with exceptional chemical stability. This work is a major breakthrough in porous material research, as these materials have the porosity and crystallinity of metal organic frameworks, the MOFs as we say, and also the exceptional chemical stability of traditional porous zeolites or carbons. He has recently started working on proton-conducting porous materials and aspires to replace the Nafion membrane in fuel cells. Regarding his academic career, he has got a very promising academic career. He has done his BSc and MSc from the University of Calcutta. He has done his PhD from the University of Hyderabad under the under the supervision of Professor J.R. Desiraju. His thesis was entitled Crystal Engineering in the Gem Alkynols. His postdoctoral training was from the year 2006 to 2008 in the University of California, Los Angeles, under the supervision of Professor O.M. Yaghi. His stint as a scientist started way back in 2000, when in 2000 to 2006, he was a research scholar in the University of Hyderabad, India. From 2006 to 2008, he was a research associate at UCLA, Los Angeles, USA. From 2008 to 11, he was Scientist C, CSIR, National Chemical Laboratory, Pune, India. From 2011 to 17, he was Scientist E1, CSIR National Chemical Laboratory at Pune, India. From 2017 till date, he is the Associate Professor at the Department of Chemical Sciences at the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, Kolkata. Dr. Rahul Banerjee has been a recipient of very many awards. His research interests include the hydrogen storage and carbon dioxide sequestration in metal organic frameworks, high throughput synthesis of metal organic frameworks, design and synthesis of chemically stable covalent organic framework and application in gas storage and catalysis, application of porous materials for drug delivery, synthesis of metal organic gels for versatile application, and crystal engineering, intermolecular interactions, hydrogen bonding, host-guest chemistry, polymorphism, and pseudopolymorphism of different organic molecules, especially APIs. Dr. Banerjee has been a recipient of very many national and international awards. The first of all being that he is the recipient of the very prestigious Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award in Chemical Sciences for the year 2018. He is a recipient of the Swarna Jayanti Fellowship in Chemical Sciences for the year 2016 to 17, a recipient of B.M. Birla Science Prize in Chemistry for the year 2015, recipient of Humboldt Research Fellowship Program for experienced researchers in 2016, recipient of Thomson Reuters Research Excellence India Citation Awards 2015, recipient of Nasi Scopus Young Scientist Award in Chemistry 2014, Fellow of the Royal Society of Chemistry, Associate Editor and an Editorial Board Member of Crystal Engineering Communications, a recipient of CSIR Young Scientist Award in 2011, recipient of the Nasi Young Scientist Platinum Jubilee Award in 2011, recognized as a PhD supervisor from the University of Pune from 2010 to 2018. He is a Young Associate of the Indian Academy of Sciences 2009 to 12. He is a recipient of the Postdoctoral Recognition Award 2008, awarded by the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry at the University of California, Los Angeles. He is a recipient of the Amgen Postdoctoral Award 2008, awarded by the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry at the University of California, Los Angeles. Dr. Banerjee is also a frontline researcher. He has been coordinating and supervising very many research proposals under his guidance. He has been a recipient of very many funded research proposals from the Department of Science and Technology. I shall be reading out a few. He has received the DST Fellowship in the year 2013 for design and synthesis of fluorinated metal organic framework materials for reversible gas storage and sequestration applications. He has received the DST Fund for the Science and Engineering Research Board, SIR, for design and synthesis of amino acid-based metal organic framework MOF and gel materials for water adsorption, chiral separation, and drug delivery applications. He has received the DST Indo-Singapore Fellowship, the project, which is entitled Crystalline Porous Nanomaterials and Membrane Composite Hybrid for Water Purification in the year 2017. He has received a fund from the Department of Atomic Energy in 2011 to 14 for inducing porosity in biocompatible metal organic frameworks, MOFs, for reversible gas storage and sequestration application. He has received the fund from GAIL India Limited in the year 2015 to 2017 for his work on porous crystalline covalent organic framework materials with remarkable chemical stability for methane storage. He has received another fund from DST and from Department of Science and Technology Nano Mission project, which was awarded in the year 2015 to 18 on isoreticulation, nanoparticle loading, and layered growth of porous crystalline covalent organic nanomaterials with remarkable chemical stability. He has been a recipient of the CSIR 11th 5-year planned program on hydrogen storage for fuel cell from 2009 to 2013, has been a recipient of CSIR 11th 5-year planned program on carbon dioxide capture 2009 to 13, has been a recipient of CSIR 12th 5-year planned program on hydrogen storage for fuel cells, HYDEN, has been a recipient of CSIR 12th 5-year planned program on carbon dioxide capture, the TAPCO. He, along with his research group, has authored and published more than 150 papers in national and international reputed journals, with an H index of 68. And above all, he has been honored with the prestigious Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award in Chemical Sciences for the year 2018, which is the highest award to the outstanding scientist or technocrat conferred by the Government of India. May I now request our esteemed speaker, Dr. Rahul Banerjee, to please deliver his talk. Over to you, Dr. Banerjee.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam. And on the very outset, firstly, let me check. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah, okay. So on the very outset, I would like to thank the organizing committee, especially the principal madam of Lady Brabourne College, and also the other participants for their kind participation. It's a big honor for getting such opportunity to present at Lady Brabourne College. I had an opportunity to interact, if I remember properly, with some of you, maybe, I don't know, I can't remember that, when a group of students and teachers visited ISAR Kolkata, and I was really intrigued by their inquisitive attitude, and we had a detailed discussion. I gave a short presentation on what kind of research we do. It was a very short one-day visit, I guess, from Kolkata to ISAR, which itself a job to visit from Kolkata to ISAR and go back. So we had some discussion, and I was really intrigued. And the time when I received this invitation, I felt that immediately I should accept it, and which I did. Because the reason behind is that not only Lady Brabourne College, I am to some extent involved, or I would say, let's say, attached with Lady Brabourne College. The reason is my mother studied in Lady Brabourne College, so that in that way, I have a nostalgic feeling regarding Lady Brabourne College. I that time expressed my willingness to visit Lady Brabourne College, which then later couldn't happen, and now it is pretty impossible due to this COVID pandemic and other issues. So anyway, that being said, let us once again thank all of you for participating, and let me start for about next half an hour, 40 minutes to discuss something. I see that the audience is quite diverse, and so let us make it a bit light. Let us not make it too complicated and boring. I gave a part of this talk to some of you if you have visited IISER Kolkata. If not, then let us go ahead. So basically, what we are going to discuss today is porous materials, porous framework materials or porous materials. And of course, I kept the title as "What are they good for?" because I believe that they are good for something. For example, porous materials are, frankly speaking, everywhere. To be very honest, all these clothes that you are wearing, they are all porous materials. And in this lockdown period, if anyone asks me if what is your achievement, especially in the lockdown period, I am very proud to say that now I can make Indian bread starting from scratch. So I know how to prepare the dough and finally make the bread. So you can understand this achievement. If you come to IISER Kolkata, I will prove that I'm not bluffing, and I will cook it and I will make it. And I don't know whether it is edible or not, but we'll see. I will at least hopefully cook a reasonable bread. So breads are porous material. Cake, biscuit, all these are porous material. As I said, the clothes you're wearing are porous material. If you have an aquaguard in your house, Kent, the tire shops, and that also contains a porous filter, which you change every 6 months or so. If you have not done that during the lockdown, please do so, because you have to change it. Otherwise, you are going to drink not so purified one. These days, we are completely covered by porous materials. If you don't believe it, these are the face masks. You just take a face mask, and as and when the college opens, you take it and put it under a regular microscope, and you will see that it has such a nice porous ordered structure. That's why you can breathe in, breathe out, and that's the beauty of it. So we are surrounded by porous materials. Porous materials are frankly speaking everywhere. But to construct a porous material in the laboratory, you need a design. You need an understanding of the subject. So the design is the following. So you think of a porous material. Let us think a little bit in abstract way. All of us have seen the bamboo sticks lying, nearby road or somewhere. When they are lying in a pile or a heap, they really don't mean much. But when you stitch them together, when you erect and you put them together, and you stitch one by one, such exactly like a joint to a joint and so on, you create these beautiful architectures like the Durga Puja Pandal, which is almost about 99 to 100 days from now. And I do not know whether we will be able to celebrate this fantastic occasion, but I hope we will be. So these pandals are porous structures. Durga Pratima could be considered or conceived as a guest. So this is the concept of making a porous material. You take a joint, connect with another joint, you create a three-dimensional structure where you have the internal void space. But that is a design. How do you make it in reality? Those who are from the chemistry background, they all know about the zinc acetate. I mean, you have seen zinc oxide coatings. People put in their face, or the cricketers put there in their face when they go into the sun for playing. So similarly, zinc acetate has this beautiful tetrahedral, this kind of beautiful tetrahedral structure where these zincs are linked in a tetrahedral fashion. And this zinc acetate, if we could consider or think that these materials are a joint, or it is just a uniform structure or a uniform joint, if you consider that, then if we could connect one joint with another and can create a three-dimensional structure exactly like what we did here. You just consider this as zinc acetate and you can connect it somehow, and you will be able to create this beautiful structure. So that is the design, that is the understanding of the design. And how do you really make it in the laboratory? So what you do is, you go to the laboratory, you take zinc acetate or zinc nitrate, you mix it with, let's say, terephthalic acid. What is the terephthalic acid? Terephthalic acid is the monomer of the PET bottle that you are using, that your water bottles. So you react terephthalic acid with zinc nitrate, and you will get these beautiful zinc terephthalate crystals, beautiful crystals, these cubic crystals. And these crystals also form exactly by the same principle, like joint to joint, and connect these another joint, and so on and so forth. So these structures, gives you a very nice cubic and open framework where this yellow ball represents the porosity of the material. So this is the porous structures, and they name it in a very simple manner. They are, they name it as this is considered as, or constructed using metal, connected via organic links, so metal and organic, and together they form a framework that is called metal organic frame. So very simple nomenclature. So now, when these materials came into the picture, people asked this question, okay, there are so many porous materials, you have already said, cake, biscuit, whatnot, and porous carbon, and what else. So why on earth we should really, invest money and time on these materials? So that is when the concept of hydrogen storage came into the picture. This is sort of a 10-year-old research, 10 years we are struggling, and so far no luck, and you can imagine why. I will tell you in a minute. So the concept of hydrogen storage is very simple in the sense why. Let's say, I will tell you, a few years ago, about 5-6 years ago, I read it in the newspaper, maybe a little bit earlier than that. I read it in the newspaper that Ratan Tata said in a meeting, he said that before I am no more, or before I leave this planet, I would like to see that all cars in India are running in water, not in petrol. Okay, so that is what he said. When I read this, I really didn't bother about it. I thought, he's joking or whatever. I'm sure many of you are thinking in that way also. But if you think on a little bit in a deeper insight, and later I studied it a little bit. So if you take water, you can split it into hydrogen and oxygen. You can. That is called water splitting. Okay. Then you store the hydrogen into one place, into a container, and then purge it into a fuel cell, and purge the oxygen from the other side. So anode and cathode, you have a membrane, and then you react it, you get water back again, and you get electron in return, and which you use to run your car, or power up your house or whatever. So this is actually a possible and a viable, theoretically viable process, but in experimentally it is very hard to do because of the following reasons. I will tell you now one by one. I will tell you so that you will understand why I'm saying it is a humongous job. So the thing is, as I said, from here to Kolkata, if I drive, it is roughly about 75 to 80 kilometers, up, down 150, 160. So if I have to use hydrogen to power up my vehicle, and everything else is taken care of, let's forget about the water part. I just say that I'm going to use hydrogen. So then what will happen is, I will need about a 1 kg hydrogen with current technology, 1 kg hydrogen to go to Kolkata and come back. I have to come back to Kolkata because I live here. Okay, so I cannot stay over there because I have no place to stay, so I have to come back. So now I have to use 1 kg of hydrogen. With the current scenario, 1 kg of hydrogen, if you have to contain, you need a 1 meter balloon. So you can imagine how big that balloon is. What is the size of your car? I'm sure many of you have a personal vehicle. So you know what is the size of the car, and you convert it into a 1 meter diameter balloon, and you will figure out that that is the absurd theory of carrying 1 meter balloon along with every car. Each car will consist of 1 meter balloon. So that's not going to work. So we need to compress hydrogen into a closer proximity, or compress it into a smaller space. How do we do that? We every time do it. The way we do it in our household is that we use cooking gas, which is in the gas mode, and we store it in the liquid mode. When we get it in the liquid mode, and we release the gas, and we use it in the gas mode. So how do you do that? We pressurize it. Very simple. But for hydrogen, you can't do it because hydrogen is the lightest element of the periodic table. And if you try to pressurize it, you will need a humongous amount of pressure, and it will give you the back pressure also. So that's not going to really work. So what people thought, okay, all right, let's think on a different way. So if we have tea in front of us, afternoon tea, and often we dip the biscuit in the tea, and then we lift it. Some of the tea is soaked into the biscuit, and we take the biscuit. So like that, if we keep on doing it, almost all the tea will be consumed by us. So it will be a phenomenon like eating the tea not drinking. Very interesting, right? So it's the same principle people thought that they are going to use to store hydrogen. So to store hydrogen into a closer proximity or into a solid adsorbent. So it will absorb the hydrogen in form of the gas. So this was the concept, and many different materials has been used. I'm not going to discuss too many other materials. I'll concentrate on the metal organic frameworks today. Okay, as I have already told that if you have hydrogen storage, you can use the hydrogen, you can use it in the fuel cell. Okay, so I have already discussed it. Now we do store hydrogen. It is not that it's not a big deal, or it's not something outstanding that we are trying to tell you. I'm trying to tell you we do store hydrogen. I use hydrogen regularly in our laboratory, in form of gas and in a cylinder. There is absolutely nothing wrong in that. But if I have to just use a cylinder to power up a vehicle, that is the hydrogen gas that I'm using in my laboratory, which will be fairly simple and reasonably high pressure, not so much, and in the laboratory only. And if you want to do something like that, your car will probably run for 100 meters and then done. Then you change the cylinder and 100 meters more, and you change the cylinder and 100 meters more, and so on and so forth. Not feasible. So then second way to store liquefy hydrogen, like I told just now, but this is extremely expensive technique, and it only we use it to power up or to give the spacecraft an escape velocity. There is a solid fuel mixed with hydrogen and many other things to give the firepower for the spacecraft to achieve the escape velocity so that it can go outer orbit. Third is the solid adsorbent, that is precisely I'm going to tell you today. So as I told you, there are many different ways you can store hydrogen. One is metal hydride, another is complex hydride, carbon-based materials, and metal organic frameworks, and so on. So metal hydride does a very good job. All the metal hydrides, they do perform very well in terms of hydrogen storage. They absorb hydrogen in a fantastic manner. However, the problem is they don't desorb. So it is like a bank, where you can deposit money, but when you would like to make a withdrawal, they are not going to allow you to do that. So that's not going to be very pretty bank in my understanding. So your absorption or the taking up should be exactly on the same speed. So perspective, so DOE, United States of America, they have said that, okay, all right, we cannot keep on in the dark. Let us try to have some kind of goal in front of goal using a solid adsorbent, a canister or inside a tank. So the solid adsorbent should take up 6 weight % of hydrogen. Okay, what does that mean? That means that if you have 100 adsorbent, it should take 6 grams of hydrogen. The pressure cannot be more. Please understand, if you have a pressurized, the chance that there could be accident, and it will be a disaster. Third is, and the most important, cost, etc. I want to mention a very important part is that the operating temperature must be minus 30 degrees to 50 degrees. So basically what there is that many different ways we store hydrogen, and the different ways are the following. As I said already, that the gas cylinders, liquid, solid adsorbents, and of course each and every has their own issues. And today I'm going to discuss about the solid adsorbents because other two are not really feasible commercially, and that's why we don't use them in the commercial vehicles. Okay, so as I said, so the solid adsorbents are of many types. Metal hydrides I already told, and nanocarbons or carbon materials and metal organic frameworks. As I told, that metal hydrides are not very good for hydrogen storage. They're very good for storage, but they are not very good to release. And that is when the DOE, now you can see the slide, and you can see that DOE as Department of Energy has put forward an idea that we should have a goal, and the goal is, as I said, that it has to contain 6 weight % hydrogen. 6 weight % hydrogen at 100 bar pressure. Pressure cannot be too much, For example, the CNG vehicle that you use, or I'm sure you have used when you have traveled to Delhi or other places in India. I don't know whether we use it in Kolkata. I don't think so. So CNG vehicles, they use methane to power up the vehicle. Why methane? Because methane, when you burn, you get carbon dioxide and water. You still get carbon dioxide, which is not good, but at least you don't get other kind of poisonous gases like sulfur dioxide, nitrous oxide, and so on and so forth. So methane powered vehicles. So these cars, they operate at 200 bar pressure, and they can take about 200 cc per cc methane into the tank. So this is completely based on pressure, high pressure absorption or high pressure technique. You cannot have that much high pressure for hydrogen, because if there is an accident, it will be a disaster. Operating temperature, as I told you, that the material, and that is the crucial part of it, operating temperature must be minus 30 degrees to 50 degrees centigrade temperature, which means the car must work at Alaska, as I told you, and also in Rajasthan, or maybe in Kolkata in summer. This summer was a little bit milder, so I have been told, I didn't feel it, but people told that, you know, this time summer was mild. Anyway, coming back. So your material has to work, and it has to have all these properties. So when people tested metal organic framework, it worked exactly beautifully. It worked beautifully, and this is the simulation diagram, or it is the picture, real picture of metal organic framework and a crystal structure with all these white dots that you can see. These are all hydrogen molecules absorbed in the metal organic framework. So inside the metal organic framework structure, please take a look that the central part of it is still quite black, and you can't see much stuff over there. This will come back, you know, I will come back to this particular point in a minute. The central part of this material is still black, and you cannot see much hydrogen. Most of the hydrogens are actually on the wall of this material. Okay. So how does these molecules will absorb hydrogen? Let me see. Hopefully this slide will run. Let me try. Let's see. Second. Yeah. Okay. All right. So if we see, these are the a bunch of single crystals of metal organic framework, and you can see that if you take one particular single crystal, and after that, if you just zoom it up, you will see that these are the pores and these are the cavities. You can see. Expose it to hydrogen, they will absorb in a very fast manner the hydrogen gas molecule. Okay, store it inside the pores, exactly like the way I showed in a previous slide. You can see this is the mechanism. This is easily available in YouTube. It is not a big deal. You can just type BASF, MOF, and you will see hundreds of videos like that. We did something like this when I was a postdoc with Professor Yaki. So these materials, like sponge, they will absorb the hydrogen gases, and when they absorb the hydrogen gases, they will store within the cavity, or within the cavity, just like this particular case, whatever I have shown it to you. So it's like a sponge, a simple sponge that, if you think of, it's of course in a coveted or a confined environment, and it does this absorption of hydrogen. Okay, all right. Now, how it happens in reality? Let's move on. So the way it happens in reality is you take the solid powder and fill it up into a empty canister like this, whatever it has been filled, the red one. So now, obviously, you will ask this question to me that, you know, I have already filled the canister with solid material. Where the gas is going to go? It is already filled with solid. Exactly. So that's the question, and once again, I will explain to in the next slide itself. So this particular case, when you will in reality, you take this canister filled with the solid adsorbent, you purge hydrogen gas. In this particular case, this was methane. Purge hydrogen gas, and you will see that this solid adsorbent filled canister can absorb or take up 3 times, sometimes even 4 times, 8, you know, depends on the material, sometimes even 20 times more the gas that otherwise an empty canister can take up. So that is very interesting in feature, and how it happens, I will explain it to you in now. So let us say think about the gas molecules. Gas molecules do have their Brownian motion of their own, and these gas molecules, when you fill it up, they will most likely try to have an anchoring point, which is the wall of a cylinder, and they will mostly stuck with the wall, because that is the place where they can have some kind of interaction with the metal. Okay. So in this particular case, if we say that there is too much white, black space, which is, there is nothing. So if we could just cut down some of the black space by making some kind of spikes inside the cylinder. So some more gas molecules will of course go and stick onto the spikes, and it will fill it up. It will fill up this particular cylinder. So if it does, I mean, if such thing happens, then if we take out all the gas molecules, assuming that they are spherical in nature, if we flatten them, put them one after another, ball, brick by brick, like we say, like so, one ball at a time, and without space. So if we take them and flatten and put them into a flat sheet, and if we measure, it will be probably, let's say, 1 meter by 1 meter. So that is 1 meter square, surface. So this is the surface area that it can cover. So if we take, on the other hand, if I want to kill all this black region, which is the empty void space. So if we want to kill all the black region, let's say I put some sand. So I use more surface. Let's say I put 1 gram of sand, inside. So 1 gram of sand will also take up some amount of gas molecules on its surface. So, if you fill it up, lots of gas molecules will be covered or attached on the surface of the 1 gram sand. So you take it out. Once again, you flatten them, each and every gas molecule one after another, like the marbles or, pearls or something. So let's say, put it up 10 by 10. So 100 meters square per gram of sand. So solid adsorbent you have used now. So this is the surface area of the material. So now for the metal organic framework, just now I told, not only it can take up on the outer surface, but it also have a significant amount of space in the inner surface. Now you can see. So the inner surface can also absorb, and this time for 1 gram of metal organic framework, you can now absorb 100 by 100 surface, which is almost 10,000 meters square per gram. So this is a beautiful way of representing that how large surface or how significant amount of material or gas it can absorb. Just think about it. What is the size of Eden Gardens in meter? You just think this is 10,000 meters square per gram of this sample. So just think about the surface of Eden Garden. How big is that in meter? And you convert and you will understand how big is this material, or how big the inner space of this tiny material is. So we do measurement of the gas absorption using nitrogen adsorption isotherm. I'm not going into the technical nitty-gritty, but since I'm going to show a few of these slides later, just please make a note that when we use Boyle's law, P1 V1 equals to P2 V2. So when there is no pressure, there is an adsorption, and finally there is a saturation. This knee represents the saturation. So as high this particular sharp, let's say a slope or some, this thing is. So if it is sharper or higher, let's say here it is 1200. So if it is sharper, so you can understand that this material is more porous. So as high this thing is, or as higher the knee is, so this material is that much porous. Okay, so now come ask, okay, why people are so much interested in this metal organic framework? The reason is, number one, is that as I told you that you can think about this material, you can think about the material in your lab or in your office or in your notebook, and you can go to the lab and you can make it the way you want, and that is not very easy to do for zeolite, silica, or porous carbon or any other material, because you can't pre-design it and go and make it. So you have to just make it and hope for the best kind of stuff. So here you can utilize a precise amount of design and architecture in order to make the final material, or you can actually think about the architecture before you make the final material. So you may ask the question, so far you told about some terephthalic acid and all, and a lot of people have already worked on it. If I take a research proposal or research idea, do I really bother about this terephthalic acid? No, you don't need to. There are many other organic linkers. For example, this is imidazole, very simple organic. Those who are in organic chemistry, they know that imidazole, when you react with zinc nitrate or any zinc salt, it forms zinc imidazolate, ZnIm2. So zinc is +2, imidazolate is -1, so 2. So charge balance. So you can do such kind of reaction. Metal will be coordinated to nitrogen. It will have a very nice, beautiful bent shape. It is not flat anymore. Same joint to joint principle in a different aspect, different manner. And this joint to joint principle is actually mimicking the zeolitic structures, the zeolites that you use. Where do I use zeolites? We use zeolites in surf excel to soften water. So the same kind of structure, but much more larger space that you do get for this kind of cases. So you have opportunities manifold, and I will show you in a minute. If you just take, this is the zeolite structure, and this is the morph structure. As you can see, spaces that's much more, and the yellow ball represents that. And if you just want to change the imidazole, if you just keep on changing the imidazole or metal, for say, and you will keep on making multiple different types and different varieties of morph. Just concentrate on the yellow ball, I would rather say, and you will see how many different varieties you can make. Or you concentrate on this beautiful, this very nice styling architecture of the zeolite. Whatever, you just see. Now I will show you how many different varieties you can make. Just take a look at it. How many different varieties, and the yellow ball represents the openness. So sometimes you need a tiny pore, okay. Sometimes you need a large pore, fair enough. And sometimes you need a large aperture but a tiny pore. Whatever, whatever is your choice, you make it. So that's what the idea is for the metal organic framework, and that's where the beauty is of these materials. So as I have already told you that these materials, okay, obviously they are very beautiful and whatnot, all kinds of beautiful things I told. But and now coming back to the real deal, real deal, or I would rather say kajer kotha. So which is, I mean, are these materials are really worthy for all these things I have told? Already half an hour we have spent on these kind of things. So the thing is, metal organic frameworks can achieve all these parameters that DOE has set, except one. So they can work only at 77 Kelvin temperature. So 77 Kelvin temperature is minus 200 degrees centigrade temperature, which we can already figure out that we cannot run a car at minus 200 degrees centigrade temperature. It has to be it has to be a room temperature, so the research is going on. If you are thinking of a research problem for your future, I mean, of course, many of you want to work on nano, and so am I, of course. But think about a research problem which is like this, because our country needs a solution, and other countries still can manage. We can't. So I have been working on it for almost 10 years. Frankly speaking, so far, not much success. So 10 years I've been working on this. So it's not an easy problem, but if you can solve it, it will be a really, really tremendous thing for the country or for your countrymen and women and children. Okay, so let me switch gear, and I will discuss very briefly about the current work that we are doing with Tata Steel and Gas Authority of India Limited, as Madam said, that we are working with GAIL. GAIL is Gas Authority of India Limited. All the CNG cars and all these things that you see, they are certified by GAIL Authority. So Gas Authority of India Limited, with them I am working. So their issues are, so that is on a CO2, that is on a methane absorption. But today I'm going to tell a little bit about the carbon dioxide. So what is that? So Tata people few years ago approached me, and they said that, look, we are emitting too much carbon dioxide. I said, of course, whom are you saying? We all know. So they said that, look, we sell carbon dioxide, and I was thinking, how on earth you sell carbon dioxide? So coming back to it, so regarding the carbon dioxide thing, so the issues were, as I told you, the Tata Steel told me about the carbon dioxide. So I said that, how do you sell it? So first let us figure out about the carbon dioxide. Where do they emit carbon dioxide? So Tata people need, they have blast furnace, all of you know. They need to purge air in the blast furnace. I had no idea about all this. So, it's a very good thing that we discuss with industry and we figure out. So they purge air to the blast furnace, like I don't know about the younger audience today, but my grandmother used to we used to have a unun in our house, and we used to put some coal, and there used to be white smoke all over the place. You can't breathe. And then, but she used to blow air into that, and then continuously burn it, so that the flame will start much more crisp and much more shiny, with the full burn. So similarly, for that case also, what they do is they purge air. Okay, what air? This air, whatever we are breathing. So this air contains a lot of moisture, and they have to clean the moisture. They can't purge the whole thing with the moisture, otherwise there will be tremendous amount of corrosion. So what they do is they purge air, fantastic, but they have to pass it through a substance which will absorb moisture. So it has to be extremely cheap. What is that substance? The substance is calcium oxide. Why calcium oxide? Why not other adsorbents? Because calcium oxide was one of the cheapest, which comes from calcium carbonate. So calcium carbonate, they heat up the calcium carbonate, they get calcium oxide. Calcium oxide absorbs some amount of moisture, and when it passes through the beds and beds of calcium oxide, it forms calcium hydroxide. So this is the way they purify or remove the moisture from the air. But when the carbon dioxide goes out, they try to trap the carbon dioxide and try to sell it to the beverage industries, Coke, Fanta, Mirinda, soda water, which we don't drink regularly. Coke, Fanta we do. Soda water is required for some other purpose, which is not very available. Anyway, so they do sell it. So what they told me that, okay, if you could take this carbon dioxide, if you could purge the carbon dioxide in the cylinder with the solid adsorbent, and if it could store about 13, 14, 15 times of carbon dioxide, which we are otherwise storing, then it will be a big profit, because then we will save a lot of money on transport. I said, absolutely fine. So we'll try to. So we are working on it. But that being said, carbon dioxide is a big problem. Coal-fired power plants, emits carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is a big problem. And please accept this from me, that all the companies, they know about it. They treat their plant, because no one wants to breathe carbon dioxide. It's not going to remain on one place. It is going to spread out. So no one wants to breathe. So what they do is, now today I am sure many of you are very, very upset about the CESC bill and whatnot. But please understand that bill, whatever you are getting today, imagine that 60% of the bill comes for this scrubber technology. So they have a technology where they purge carbon dioxide through this amine scrubber. Why? Amine is basic, carbon dioxide obviously is acidic. Acid plus base, when it reacts, it forms a salt. Very simple. It's from this methanol or monoethanol, and they precipitate it. It is not a viable technology, but it is the only technology it is available. So what they said, that can we replace this, at least not full 100%. We cannot do it 100% at one stage. Maybe one membrane or something where we will remove a significant amount of carbon dioxide in the first shot, so that our efficiency of this process increases. Let's say the efficiency increases by 10%, not more than that. That will counter into a huge amount of profit, huge amount of savings from their part. So similarly, now we are trying to make some of these MOF materials, put it into the canister, and try to see whether it works or not. I will not go to the too much technical nitty-gritties, but I want to show you that we use the same amine and acid technique, exactly same thing. We just put it on a MOF backbone, created this powder full of amine, and when we did try to store the carbon dioxide, we figured out that it stores a very nice amount of carbon dioxide. We were not very happy about it, because these data mean nothing. We just checked the crystal structure, and we found out that the single crystal structure of this MOF contains a carbon dioxide inside. Well, this is only a one pore. There are millions of pore and then millions of carbon dioxide molecules. Still, I don't think it is a really remarkable result, if you ask me, because it has to be 10 carbon dioxide per pore, or maybe 20. Then it will make some sense. So right now we are stuck at 1. So but we are still working with them. It's a long-term process. So hope for the best, and let's see. Anyway, now I will come back to the last part of my talk. Let's finish it in 5 minutes. I have been speaking for almost close to 40 minutes now. So, okay. So last part of my talk, I have already discussed about these zeolites, a little bit about the porous carbon, metal organic frameworks. But the problem with metal organic framework is that these materials are not stable in water. Those who work on coordination chemistry, I'm sure many of you do, you know that the metal carboxylate bonds are very nicely hydrolyzable in water. If you put it into water, after a few rounds, they will all, fall apart. Metal will form metal hydroxide, and carboxylic acid will fall apart. So this is not going to work. So few people along with us, when we were working on this field, thought that let us forget about the metal. Let's make a metal organic framework without a metal. So no metal, we make a framework material by our choice. Okay. How do we do that? So the way we do that, we follow the same joint-to-joint principle. This was initially conceived by my postdoc supervisor, Omar Yagi. So same, if you take a boronic acid, react it, you get this boraxine anhydride kind of structure. And you take diboronic acid, you make this nice joint to joint, just simple heating. Take diboronic acid, just do a simple heating, and you get this nice crystalline structures where there is no metal whatsoever, but they have a very nice framework structure. They are organic in nature. They are formed by covalent bond. A lot of people, a lot of inorganic chemists says that boron is not organic. I agree with you, or I don't want to fight with you, but at least for the time being, assume that these are covalent bonded structures. They are organic in nature, and they are framework. So covalent organic framework. Very simple nomenclature. So now how we started making it. So when we started making it in our laboratory, we took a simple amine and simple aldehyde. Those who are, once again, those who are from the chemistry background knows that amine and aldehyde does a very simple reaction called a Schiff base. So it is a very Hugo Schiff around 150 years ago discovered this Schiff base reaction. It's a very simple Schiff base reaction where amine and aldehyde reacts and you formed a C double bond N bond. It's a very simple. Those who are not from the chemistry background, they can ignore these chemistry jargons. But what we can just see that you have a C2 symmetric or a linear linker and a hexagon or a trigonal linker. So if you do have a linear and a trigonal stuff, what you can get is some kind of hexagonal morphology like this. So in reality, we expect it to form like that. And if it forms, then this particular case, it will stack on top of each other, exactly like graphite and graphene. So, so graphene forms the graphite. So exactly the way it will stack, and you will have these beautiful pores inside. So that is the design. I told you, you think about in the lab and you go to the bench and you make it. So we made it in the laboratory, and it is very nice porous structure. As you can see, these beautiful pores are visible. So this is the covalent organic framework. Once again, now this is completely covalent bonded. So covalent organic structures framework, covalent organic. Okay, so this is fantastic. Many different ways you can make covalent organic frameworks, because many different ways. I'm not going into that part in that much of detail. If I come over there and give a lecture to only the chemistry students, and I will discuss more about the scientific aspects of it, but let us make it a little bit light. So covalent, only thing I want to focus here is, or request you to pay attention is that this water molecule, and these are reversible reaction. Why this has to be a reversible reaction? The reason it has to be a reversible reaction, because unless it is reversible, you don't, unless the bond formation and bond breakage happens, you don't get it an opportunity or give it an opportunity to correct itself. The correction, it's like this. If you go to a room and sit in a hurry, you will always sit in a haphazard mode. But if you take your time, everybody, you figure out who is your friend, who is not so friend, and then you sit very nicely and organized manner into a room. So that's why you need a time, and that's what you need, the reversibility. So bond breaking, bond making, bond breaking. So the water plays a very crucial role. But there is also another problem. Problem is, if something is reversible, that means it can go to forward direction, it can also come back to the backward direction. Which means, if you need water to form this product, you can also add water and the product is broken. That's precisely happened when we made the compound. So when the Yagi group made, we all made, we wanted to make a very nice stable material. We ditched the metal. We made a even unstable material after so much of effort in our laboratory. Completely unstable material. So I started thinking, and my group people started thinking, I mean, come on, we wanted to make a stable material. How on earth we are continuously making unstable material? What is the point? People will laugh at us. So then we solved the problem. Once again, as I said, that I will not go into the chemistry jargon over here. We used a reversible and a combination of a reversible and an irreversible process. Because why reversible? Because reversible process will give you the crystallinity, porosity, and irreversible process will give you the chemical stability. So we combined the reversible process and an irreversible process and created a material which is porous, crystalline, and chemically stable. Why porous? Because we need to make a porous material. Why crystalline? So that we know what we have made. It should not be looking into a dark or something. And third, why chemically stable? I think we all know why something should be chemically stable and should not dissolve or go bad in water. Because look at the porous materials that we are wearing, right? These are all porous materials, I already told. And you go outside and it is not stable in water, it will soluble, and you go outside and there is a rain and you have no umbrella or nothing. So you are in disarray. So we use this idea, and I will show you now how they work. Please take a look at it. This is the powder diffraction data. So it shows the crystallinity in boiling water and HCl, hydrochloric acid. As you can see, after 1 week, absolutely no change in both powder diffraction data. And here also, I'm showing you the nitrogen adsorption isotherm. Once again, no change whatsoever. So this is the beauty of this material. Not only that, not only in hydrochloric acid and water, it can also work in sodium hydroxide. 9 normal sodium hydroxide, it is stable. Imagine you dip your hand into 1 normal sodium hydroxide for, let's say, 10 seconds. You will see your hand is already, itching sensation is happening in your mouth. Okay, so anyway, so now to wrap it up, as I told you that everything comes with a price. So when we started making this compound, we figured out that yes, it works, all the design works, everything is fine, but it works in when we slow the process and we really do a lot of chemical treatment. Otherwise, if we just mix it one after another, this amine and aldehyde, which we want to do, because at the end of the day, if we have to take it to the industry, how will it work if we just make it in a slow manner? So when we try to make it in a very fast, quick manner. Okay, so anyway, so the problem was when we were trying to make these compounds into a bulk material. Why we wanted to make it into bulk, I will come back to you in a minute. You will get an idea why we wanted to make it in bulk. But every time we wanted to make it in a bulk, we were always suffering a problem that these materials are reacting in a haphazard manner. It's a very simple thing. You react A and B, and you expect them to form the way you want. No, it doesn't happen. So these are organic molecules, so they form a porous garbage, to be very honest. To be very honest, amorphous garbage. The porosity was even less. So then we thought that, okay, all right, this is a problem, how to sort it out. So we came back to it, and we used a process that is called freeze pump thaw. Please don't use it ever. My students started crying when they use it. It's a brute technique to get the thermodynamic product, and you get it in a very mild yield. You should never use it. But initially we had no choice, and we used to make it in this particular way. And then, as I told you, that in this process you have to heat it for 7 days, and then you have to use a freeze pump, and then seal it off, and after that you have to break the seal and then wash it, and you get about 10, 15, 20, 100 milligram compound. So then I visited Tata Steel, as I told you, the Jamshedpur facility, a beautiful facility if you get an opportunity to see it. So we visited, and they said that, this is the pipe in which carbon dioxide is coming. So if you are not willing to believe me, the size of the pipe, so please see the truck and see the dimension. There is no morphing. I have no idea how to use any videos or anything like TikTok or whatever so that I can morph. So this is a real image. You can see this is the size of the pipe. And I figured that, our children, our students' children, and their children, and they themselves, all of us will keep on making morphs in that particular way. This pipe will never fill. So then we had to figure out a way to make these materials in a fast, rapid manner. Otherwise there is no point. Otherwise I may do and publish few papers here and there, but at the end of the day, who cares? So we need to make it in this particular way, very quick. This way will not work. So we figured out that, let's think a little bit, go backward. How do people make pottery? So the way they do it, you take the clay, you add a little bit of water, you make it a mold out of it, and then you construct this nice structure. How do you make biscuits? You take flour, you add some egg, you add a little bit of water, you make a dough, and then you add a lot of other things, and you put it into an oven for baking. What is the common here? And you make this porous structure. What is common? So common over here every time. That is water. So we figured out that, okay, we are perhaps reacting it too fast. We want to make it fast, but we are reacting it too fast. So how do we change that? So we figured out that, we cannot react it too fast. Yes. We cannot react it too slow either. Then nothing will happen. So what we thought that we have an amine. We need to react the amine with aldehyde. Okay, fine. We wanted to make it slow, but not too slow. So how do we do it? So we took organic acid, we took the organic amine, mixed them together. Acid and amine, which is base, forms a salt. Salt has so many hydrogen bonding. Now the aldehyde is coming in. It needs to first break the hydrogen bonding, then only it can react. that will give me the time, that will give me the delay, and that will give me that exact timing for this particular purpose. So eventually go back to the pottery and think about it. So, in my 10 to 15 years of career, if you ask me that what you have really learned, so that is precisely what has happened. You have the aldehyde, you have the salt, and you start reacting them together. As I told you, the aldehyde cannot just react. It needs to first break the bond, break the salt bridge, or break the hydrogen bond, and then only it can react, and that will give you the delay, and finally you will get ordered structure. This is in a real way we made it. Once again, now I will refrain from showing it. Let me go through it quickly so that you can, if you have questions during the time of questions, you can ask me. So it's a very simple technique. We took acid and amine, we made a dough, added aldehyde, add a little tiny amount of water. Exactly, if you think in your house, this is the exactly same way we make cake or pauti or the bread. So and you bake it or heat it up for a minute, and you will get these porous crop structures or covalent organic membrane. They have very beautiful crystallinity. They have even better porosity compared to what we were using. And now we are hitting around 3,000 meters square per gram. Then we wanted to make it shapes, because if you want to fit it into a cylinder, it has to have a nice shapes. Otherwise, you will waste a lot of white space. We could make a lot of different shapes. And this process, if you think a little bit carefully, it is nothing but a terracotta process, which is an Italian word, means baked earth. And our Bishnupur and other places, we have these beautiful terracotta sculptures and the temples. We got inspired with that, and we felt that if it is really a terracotta process, we should be able to utilize this idea of terracotta, and we should be able to make such sculptures and all of the covalent organic framework. Yes, we could. And we could make a lamp, we could make these small tiny deer and whatnot. They are all porous, they are all crystalline, they are all beautiful materials. And not only that, as I told you, we also came up, we have came up with this patented technology where we use, although I say patented very fancy way, this is nothing but making the masala in our house. This is a twin screw extruder where we are using the aldehyde and amine, and you run the screw one clockwise, another anti-clockwise, you get the product. That's it. So we have been doing this, and these are the products. As you can see, you can make it now in almost, I won't say kilogram scale. We are not up to the level, but at least definitely 500 gram to half a kilo to 1/4 of a kilo kg. Okay, so I pretty much feel that that should be it. We have been, I've been talking for quite some time. I hope you guys are not too much bored. So let's finish it off with this note that this is an opportunity for you, for all of us, to work together. There are a lot of opportunities. I have only done a few things, and you can do much more. Lots of interesting science that you can do over here. And I would encourage you to look into these porous materials and think about it. Think about it when you take up into a research career. What you can do with that, what I couldn't do, as I told you, hydrogen storage, carbon dioxide capture, methane, sensor sequestration, catalysis, what not. And not only that, nowadays people are trying to make with amino acid and calcium the porous MOF structures for the osteoporosis as a calcium supplement. So there also, you can even look into that. Lots of opportunities for you. This is my group. This was my group. Now I have a much more smaller group. These are my funding agencies who should be acknowledged immensely for their funding. And of course, needless to say, all my students should be acknowledged. They have been working like anything under these circumstances, and previously, and now it is even more challenging. And finally, I thank you all for your patience, and it was a pleasure and it was an honor for me to deliver this talk, and I will be happy if you have any questions to answer. Thank you very much. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Professor Banerjee. Thank you so very much for this extremely illuminating and thought-provoking lecture. Now the house is open for question-answer session. There are several questions in the chat box. I will first put forward them. First one is from Kartik Gupta. He has asked that what are the major obstacles to use hydrogen as fuel? There are two parts. First part is are the major obstacles to use hydrogen as a fuel? And the second part is, he has asked about the progress work regarding removal of this obstacle.
Okay, so the obstacle, as I told you about the storing hydrogen in a gas mode in a confined space. So you cannot compress it too hard like you do, like you cooking gas. You cannot compress it too hard because remember the hydrogen is the lightest element in the periodic table. So that is the obstacle, is that to absorb this, and hydrogen don't have a dipole moment. To polarize hydrogen is challenging. So if you have to absorb the hydrogen in the gas mode, it has to be physis option, and the molecule which is so difficult to polarize, carbon dioxide is rather easy because it does have a dipole. So hydrogen is very challenging to polarize, and as a result, unless you have a precise interaction, you cannot store hydrogen. What is the precise interaction? The precise interaction cannot be, I'll tell you the interaction. Right now, the interaction that we can achieve is about 10 to 15 kilojoule per mole. That is called physis option. In chemis option, the interaction is 50 kilojoule per mole and higher, which you don't want, because in the chemis option, it is completely stuck. It cannot be. So now, what you need is to invent a material which will have a physis option, but the interaction energy is roughly between 25 to 40 kilojoule per mole, and that will solve the problem. 10 years we have been working on others. We couldn't figure out the material.
Thank you, sir. The second question is from Mr. Prodipto De. He has actually put forward 3 questions. First one is, MOF are thermally unstable. How do you overcome this difficulty?
MOFs are not thermally unstable. They are not. They are chemically unstable. They are very thermally stable. I mean, because please think about it. They are structured material. They are very thermally stable. You think, let's put it in this particular way. Most of the pandals and all, they are fairly stable in rain and wind and all, unless there is Amphan or something like that. But they're not stable when you take a sword and you chew off or cut down the ropes or the joints, then immediately they will collapse. So like that, they are thermally stable. There is absolutely no problem, but they are not chemically stable.
Okay, thank you. Second, he has asked that how is reversibility giving porosity and crystallinity?
Oh, okay. The way it is, I explained it very briefly. Let's think of this particular way. First, let us talk about the crystallinity. If I have, if all of us, I see around 200 people over here. If all of us are standing next to auditorium, and if I tell all of you, there is a 200-seater auditorium, and if I say all of you that, okay, you need to get into the auditorium and you have 10 seconds to find out your chair, then immediately what you will see is people will run inside the auditorium and then there will be a chaos. So this is a irreversible process. On the other hand, if I say that you have 10 minutes to figure out your chair, you will see that the process will be very smooth. Everybody has sat properly and all. Everybody has discussed with themselves with whom they want to sit, with whom they don't want to sit, and so on. And that's what the crystallinity I'm talking about. So everybody is organized. So similarly, in the molecules also, if you give a reversibility, so you have A and you have B, they're coming in contact with each other. And if it is a haphazard reaction, then everything will be, and if it is a fast reaction, everything will be haphazard. But if you give it an opportunity reversibility, first A and B will react, then the bonds will break. Again A and B will react. And then one more molecule of A will come, another molecule of B will come. Again, there will be bond breaking. And again, so it will keep on happening, or the corrections will happening eventually until unless it forms the crystalline structure. So this gives a reversibility, reversible structure and crystalline. If it is a crystalline, there is a long range order. This is a porous structure, or this is a porous network structure. If a network has a long range order, obviously it will be porous. So that's pretty much the way you can achieve it.
Thank you. Excellently explained. Thirdly, he has asked that can MOF or COF be used in drug delivery?
Yes, there has been some reports, but please make a note that you cannot use toxic metal to do something like that, like chromium or other things. You have to be a bit careful about it. So if anybody is planning to do drug delivery with MOF or other thing, it has to be environment friendly or bio-friendly metal like calcium, magnesium, those kind of metals. Other metals will not be advisable. So yes, the people are using metal organic films for drug delivery, mainly for the skin and other things, not for oral materials, but mainly for the skin and other purposes. Yes, yes. If you type, just Google it, you will get lots of information.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Bishwajit Gayan, Assistant Professor, Department of Chemistry, DSc SIT-SC, has asked that he wants to know about splitting of water by CD composite.
CD, if I am unable to understand what exactly CD is. Is it cyclodextrin composite or
If I may interrupt you, I am requesting Dr. Bishwajit Gayan, if he is there, to please unmute himself and ask the question directly to the speaker.
Sir, hello, I am audible?
Yes, yes.
Sir, I am asking about the carbon dot framework.
Oh, carbon dot. Okay, sorry. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so in carbon dot, yes, carbon dot, please understand, when you are talking about the water splitting, you have to keep it in mind that how we are planning to split water. We are thinking about splitting water using sunlight, mostly. So the carbon dot splitting that you are talking about must absorb sunlight. Number one. Number two is that it has to be conducting in nature, because the electron has to move, right? Otherwise, how it will split water. And there are other parameters which I am not going into it. So these, if you have these kind of features, number one, absorbing the light, number two, conducting the electron, and then probably yes, this could be a good material for water splitting. If you can develop a carbon dot with that features in mind. So two primary properties are there: very good absorption of light and very nice flow of electron.
Thank you, sir. Now, Noyon Banerjee, he has asked two questions. The first one is, sir, you talked about porosity of MOFs. In this regard, I have two questions. Can the porosity of a particular MOF be regulated for various applications without compromising the structural strength or constitution, for example, by using variable voltage or some other mode?
This is called electrocrystallization. You can not tune the porosity in this particular manner, but you may probably get a better quality single crystals if you do it. This is called electrocrystallization process. Other than that, using electricity, I don't think you will be able to make different porous material, because remember, at the end of the day, when you are making a porous structure, it has to have a long range order. And if you are using some kind of electricity or electrocrystallization or electrodeposition, often there is the long range order is compromised. So that you have to keep it in mind, the long range order that I have been talking about since the beginning.
Okay, thank you, sir. The second part of his question is, how do you precisely measure the MOF parameters like pore size? Do you rely on spectroscopy and computations or on microscopic techniques?
No, neither of those. We use something called, first of all, we can use single crystal diffraction. Single crystal diffraction gives you precise location. That is those who are in undergrads and probably know. Among all the techniques, single crystal diffraction gives you the precise information and the location of atoms and molecules inside a solid. So no other technique can do that. Neither NMR nor IR, mass, any other technique cannot give. They are beautiful techniques, but they can't do this. So first you do the single crystal diffraction. Second, what you do is you verify it with something called a gas adsorption isotherm at a particular temperature and a particular pressure, how much gas is getting absorbed. Then you change the pressure, keeping the temperature constant, and you make sure that how much gas is absorbed and so on, so that you know that your material can absorb this much of gas. So that, and then now you know how much material you have added into your, let's say, a bulb or something. So if you have added 1 gram of material and it can absorb, let's say, 100 cc of nitrogen. So that means 1 gram material can absorb 100 cc. So you back calculate, you know the molecular weight of your material, and you know the porosity. So that's the way you do it.
Thank you so very much. There is another question. Upashana Chatterjee of third year Lady Brabourne College Chemistry Honours. She has put forward a question. She said that in this pandemic situation, the patients need oxygen on a daily basis and the oxygen cylinders do require a lot of space. Isn't it possible to store oxygen in MOFs in the time of crisis so that we get better amount of it without the space restrictions?
It is an excellent question. I would like to ask the second question to Upashana. Is that, Upashana, why do you think we grow old and we die? Anybody knows?
Upashana, please unmute
Why do we
yourself
grow
and
die?
interact.
You know, anyway, I would like to tell you that the reason, one of the fundamental reason, if we breathe oxygen, if we would have been a species which would have breathed nitrogen, we would have lived probably, I don't know, 300, 400, 500 years, unless it is environmentally decayed, our body is decayed, but we oxidize, you know. That's why a lot of people, boys and girls, and also several senior people, they put a lot of antioxidant powders in the face, so so that the skin is crisp and shiny. Why? Because our skin is oxidized completely, always. So similarly, if you put oxygen, that is the most challenging gas. If you put oxygen, oxygen will try to oxidize your compound. So the material will not only have an issue of getting oxidized, but also it will coordinate. It will do a lot of oxidizing. If it oxidizes, then automatically the material is broken. So you don't want to use a cylinder where your material, you know, after so much of effort you have put in, after 2 rounds everything is gone. Once the structure is broken, then its performance is broken. It is just a useless junk. It will just absorb a lot of space. So that is what we need to keep it in mind when we are using oxygen. Using MOF as a storage of oxygen is not very advisable. We should probably try to use some polymers, which will eventually get oxidized anyway. But at least some polymers or porous carbon or some kind of rigid, much more robust structure. I don't think MOFs are going to be a very promising material, but they could be used if we could make a non-oxidizable MOF or MOF with a a much more solid coating. So that's what my belief is. I have never tried. If someone wants to try, it will be really wonderful.
Thank you so very much. Shonali Sengupta, she has asked that after preparation of MOF, how can we store it? Does it absorb moisture and break the structure? How to activate MOF for using that in catalysis or adsorption?
Okay, it is fairly easy question. So and it's a very good question actually. So the storing is not very difficult. Once you make the MOF, what you do is you put it into a sample vial. You purge some nitrogen in the sample vial, in the solid itself, just a simple regular nitrogen, and you close the sample vial, cover it with let's say Teflon tape, and put it into a regular desiccator. That's pretty much the way you do it. What was the second question? How to activate MOFs for using that in catalysis?
Yes, how to activate MOF for using that in catalysis
okay,
or adsorption.
Yeah. So the way you do it, because when you make the MOF, it also contains a lot of oligomeric junk trapped inside the pore. So the way to activate is you just treat this material with chloroform or dichloromethane, which is a very volatile solvent. You just treat it few rounds, dry, I would say, dry chloroform, 1 or 2 rounds. You soak it and then you filter it off, soak it again, filter it off, and do it few rounds. It will wash out all the garbage from the pore, and then you just do a simple evacuation of a regular routine vacuum pump. You can do it in a kg scale also, even more than kg scale. So it just remove it and your MOF is ready as it can be. And then you can use those for catalysis. Just use the powder. I mean, that's absolutely fine. If you are making a powder, just use the powder. And for gas absorption also, same thing. Just use the powder as a gas absorption. That's it. So it's very easy.
Okay, thank you, sir. There is a question, there's no name, whatever, I'm reading the question. MOF exhibits low electrical conductivity, and this leads for the synthesis of MOF derived materials. Due to this, MOF alone sometimes can't be used for hydrogen evolution reaction. How to improve the conductivity of MOF?
Okay, so there has been a lot of research on this particular topic about the conducting three-dimensional material with conducting. So right now, what people have done to answer the question is that yes, the MOF's conductivity, once you make it, it's compromised. So right now, what people have tried to do is they have tried to make 2D MOF. These are all the 3D structures I showed it to you. Phenolate. If you take a phenol, polyphenol kind of structure, and if you put a metal, that will be a chelating bond. And then you will have a 2D structure, it will be sort of like a graphite, and then you will have a conducting nature. But still, the conductivity is fairly compromised. In order to use the conductivity in that, if you use a slight dopant like pani or some kind of polyamine kind of substance, that will push the conductivity of these MOF materials. And right now, people are using these kind of dual stuff to create, or I would rather say, impregnate conductivity in the MOF materials.
Okay, thank you. Shogato Shorkar has asked that how a new metallogel can be understood as whether it is NMOF or coordination polymer, as single crystal structure is unknown in that case.
If you want to call it as a MOF, you need to make the dry zero gel and then check the gas absorption isotherm. If the gas absorption isotherm is high and it shows a very excellent porosity, then you can fairly, with a lot of surety, can say that it is a porous MOF. Otherwise, it's a coordination polymer. Your anion is trapped inside the pore, and you can't get a storage capacity.
Thank you, sir. Do you have some more time? Because there are a couple of questions more.
Yes. Let's go ahead. Yes. Couple
okay,
of.
Okay. Thank you. Ranjana Bormon, she has asked that, does this MOFs have any retention time for storage? And for the zinc imidazole MOFs, you showed many different MOFs. Can any other metals be used to make such MOFs?
We have made it with cobalt. Some people have tried to make it with cadmium, manganese, and few other metals. Yes, it is possible to make zinc imidazolates other than metal, cadmium imidazolates. Whatever is having a +2 charge and can have a tetrahedral structure, all the metals can be used. And another retention time, yes, no, it does not have any retention time. If you keep it in a closed container, that's it. It remains, as long as you can keep it, and unless you heat it up or or shake the container or throw the container into somewhere. Otherwise, the retention time is fairly.
Okay, thank you. Kaushik Ghosh, he has asked that you have already addressed this question, I believe. Is there any porous drug delivery organic material known?
There are many. There are many porous drug delivery organic materials. Porous carbon, porous polymer, even mesoporous silica. Silica cannot be called a complete organic, but there are many. There are many such materials known. Just once again, just Google it and you will get so much information. I mean, there are so many, I would say. Porous polymers have been used for drug delivery for quite some time. Porous organic polymers, porous polyphenols, these are for drug delivery for quite some time.
Thank you, sir. Purbali Dash of Chemistry Department, Lady Brabourne College, she has asked that, are COF and MOF very expensive to synthesize, and can they be used in industry?
If I understood that, yes, they can be. I mean, people are using MOFs in the industry. If you can purchase MOF from the market, BASF, Ludwigshafen, if you just type once again in Google, you will see that how extensively they are using MOFs. Aramco, the company in Saudi Arabia, they are using MOF materials, not the expensive ones, not the very beautiful ones, but much more cheaper one. People are using, that's very simple way. MOFs can be also made, if you say oxalic acid, if you take oxalic acid and aluminium nitrate, you can make aluminium oxalate, which is pretty cheap. Oxalic acid 1 kilo is 112 rupees, and aluminium nitrate 1 kilo is 290 rupees or something. So overall, within $500, you can make about 1 kilo of aluminium oxalate. So which is fairly not bad. So yes, we can make it. Costs are not that cheap, but we are trying to make it a much more cheaper way. It was very, very difficult to make at some times, but now we have standardized the process. Hopefully, in next 3-4 years, we will be able to make it fairly in a better way.
Thank you, sir. Oishi Mitro, a very bright former student of ours, she has asked that how will we decide what type of metal is suitable for a MOF for hydrogen storage or carbon dioxide storage?
Well, that's once again the very simple way to answer it, that you need to get an idea about the interaction between the metal and the carbon dioxide and hydrogen. For example, let's put it in this way: palladium. If we could have used and made a palladium-based MOF or platinum, which will be very expensive, but they will have a very beautiful interaction with hydrogen. We all know that. So if we could make a palladium-based MOF. But we can't right now to make a porous MOF, and that will not be very feasible. And you don't want to use palladium and other things to in the car or any other place. So your metal choice has to be a compromise between the interaction and the cost and the way to make and the porosity and other things. So based on these factors, you need to choose a metal. Carbon dioxide is exactly the same way. Once again, interaction between the carbon dioxide and the metal, cost of the metal, whether it will eventually make a porous material or not. If you have a beautiful fancy car and only one person can sit, I mean, will it be useful for your family? I don't think so. But on the other hand, if you have an Ambassador, which doesn't look that good, but it can still take a lot of people. So like that, you have to have a compromise what particular job you are trying to do, and accordingly take it.
Professor Banerjee, the chat box is becoming richer and richer with questions. How long can you spare?
maybe I'm glad that a lot of people have felt it very
exactly very interesting and illuminating.
And then those, I mean, I understand I won't be able to answer all the questions, but that being said, it is good to see that a lot of and if you have any questions, all of you can Google my email ID, and I will be happy to answer questions. And if you can't, we can even chat in phone. I mean, there is nothing wrong in that, you know. Hence, if everybody permits, maybe we could call it a day. And I will be, if I get an opportunity, I will visit your institute at some point. Probably try to deliver something else and say something else. Same talk will be really boring, and then that time we can discuss these questions. Absolutely no problem.
We'll be looking forward to it, Dr. Banerjee.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm looking forward more.
We are really looking forward to it. Thank you so very much.
So thank you, sir. Thank you so very much. So I would request all the participants, I'm very sorry, whose questions remain unanswered. You are free to approach Professor Banerjee through his mail ID or whatever is available, and ask him regard all your questions. So we are now in the concluding part of today's webinar. Once again, on behalf of Lady Brabourne College, I extend our sincere thanks to Professor Rahul Banerjee for sparing time from his busy schedule to virtually join us and deliver this excellently lucid, informative, and thought-provoking presentation. Thank you so very much. My thanks also goes to our respected Madam Principal, Professor Shiuli Shorkar, for her constant support. And
I'm extending a hearty thanks to you for your wonderful lecture, for igniting young minds, for illuminating our students and us. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, madam. And I would also like to thank all the participants who still stayed back. And if there is an opportunity, once again, as I told you, I shall visit your place, and then we shall have a more elaborate discussion. So once again, I thank all of you, and with your permission, I will disconnect now.